Hey folks, me again, Lenny Lawson, the car guru. I've got a question for you today, and I'm going to preface that question with something that happened yesterday afternoon. I walked into the dealership, came into the Nissan service drive, and looked up in the Ford showroom, and here comes a familiar face. And this gentleman, I hadn't seen him in probably face-to-face in probably 5 or 6 years, but he was my preacher back in the late 80s and early 90s. Brent Hall, United Methodist preacher. And he had a calling many, many years before I met him to go into the ministry. And I'm glad he did, because he changed my life. Well, let's say that Christ worked through him to get to me. And I will be forever grateful to this human being for being that vehicle for me to help open my eyes. And so anyway, he came to visit, but he really didn't come to visit to see me. That's kind of the bad part of this. He came to see my daughter's new dealership dog, which happens to be an 8-week-old French bulldog, or Frenchie, named Dixie. So he had seen her picture, I guess, on Facebook. He's a Facebook friend. And he saw Dixie, and he had to come by he had other business up here, and he had to come by to see Dixie. And I'm glad he did, because it reminded me of the word calling. You know, what is a calling? You know, is it something that the Holy Spirit alerts you to? Is it something that arises out of guilt? Something that arises out of maybe some kind of blessing that you want to pass on to somebody else? You know, do you have one? Or have you had one? You know, I wish you could answer these rhetorical questions. You know, and I can answer mine. I had a calling to do this. It's probably 25 years ago or longer. I keep saying 25 years. It may be 30 years ago now that I've been doing a radio show I didn't do a podcast until about 2.5 years ago, because I didn't know how to do it. I didn't even know what a podcast was. But after doing the radio program and you know, morphing from, you know, just doing it on like Thursdays, I did it one day a week, and then I moved to every day of the week, and did that for a lot of years, and had a co-host, Bill Meade, and then Tim Cable. And then just one day I decided, okay, I'm just going to do this myself. And since then, I've been blessed tremendously with the expansion of this program across the country, and the phone calls and the interventions that I get to do in other people's lives, their car lives. But it's more than that, though. It's also the other avenues that I decide to take that sometimes get away from, you know, just the car business or your car life, or, you know, the history of the Model T Ford. You know, those type of things are fascinating and very important, but not as important as other types of callings. But I hope that through this program, and obviously it has happened numerous times because of the feedback that I get, that I have been able to bless other people's lives in a way that's meaningful, and not just ways to help them with their car life, but with their life in general. So thank you, Brent Hall, for your calling and for the way that it blessed me and led me into many endeavors, and especially this one. And I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, I am back. Let me ask you another question. Can a warning be a blessing? Well, I guess it can if you pay attention to the warning and if it's valid. Here's a particular case where it was definitely valid. I had a radio show listener give me a call, and he said, "Mr. Lawson," I said, "You can call me Lenny." And he said, "Lenny, I just received something that you warned me about, and it was an invitation to come in and claim some prizes." So this is one of those solicitations from a car dealership where, they're just trying to get you to come into the store, and hopefully they'll be able to convert you into a car buyer instead of just somebody sitting at their house going through their mail. And so this was, and he asked me, he said, Lenny, this looks like a no-lose situation. I said, okay, well, tell me what they're offering. Well, number one, there's a check at the bottom of this offer, and it says that, and the check is for $2,000 plus dollars, okay, over $2,000. I said, well, that's great. What do you have to do to get that? Well, you just have to go in and, I guess, peel it off, and they'll give you $2,000 discount. Well, cool. Any dealer will do that. Okay, what else? And he said, well, I have apparently won three of the following things. Not just one, but three. I've either won a $500 gift card, $2,500 instant scratch ticket, 65-inch TV, a smartwatch, a Bluetooth smartwatch, $5,000 instant scratch ticket, or a 2025 vehicle. I won't say what brand it is. I said, that sounds, at first glance, that doesn't sound too bad until you really read it again. So what did he really win? Well, a worthless smartwatch and 2 lottery tickets. Now, you can go down to a 7-Eleven or whatever it's called in your neighborhood and get you a couple lottery tickets. And I guarantee you have a whole lot better chance of winning something. Plus, it'll support the Tennessee lottery. So here you go. What does this do for you? What is the benefit? Well, maybe it's an afternoon out, right? It's a reason to drive down and just go into this little peaceful showroom and get your prizes, right? Unfortunately, that's not what happens. What happens is there's a lot of pressure brought to bear because that's what these stores do. They are a pit of vipers. Many times, as I've said, they don't even work for the dealership. They're just a bunch of hired guns. Basically a company that a dealership hires to come in and conduct a sale event. And they send out all these flyers, and these people just flood in to get their free prizes. And in many cases, they get nothing except a hassle and a lot of pressure to do something that they shouldn't do. And if they get you to test drive a car, they've won. If they get you to let them have your keys and, they disappear for a while and somebody's going to appraise your vehicle, and then an hour later, you're ready to leave, you're tired of waiting, and they're, you ask for your keys and they say, well, I don't know, I have to check and see. And it takes them another hour to find your keys. In the meantime, they're still putting pressure on you to buy a car. This is the way it works. Why does it have to be this way? Well, it doesn't. But it is because people respond to these flyers. They go in to see what they've won. People like free stuff, right? And because they have no willpower, they weren't even in the market for a car. They end up buying something. And, they were upside down on their trade. They owed a lot more on it than it was worth. And, in some of these dealerships, a salesperson will even say this to them, especially if they're folks with, marginal credit. They'll say, why don't you I tell you what, you owe way too much on your car than it's worth. Just go ahead and let the bank repossess it. Just stop paying for it. You can go ahead and buy our car and just park the other one, and the bank will come get it, and then your troubles will be over. Is that the way it works? No, it's not. What happens is the bank repossesses the car. They take it to an auction, and they sell it for pennies on the dollar. And then they come and they sue you for the difference. They get a judgment against you, and then they can garnish your wages. I've even heard some customers tell me that the guy that they were talking to at the dealership said, well, they can't garnish your wages because you're on disability. They can't hurt you. They use all of these lies to get people to fall into the trap. Now, again, let me emphasize, this is a small minority of dealers. They're very loud, but they're a small minority. Most of the dealers in this country do it right and play it straight and don't do these kind of games. They don't hire the gunslingers to come in. And so, they're more concerned about their reputation. Well, let's say, they are concerned with selling cars. They want to sell a lot of cars. There's no doubt about it. Every dealer does. They want to service a lot of cars. They want to retain customers. But they're concerned about maintaining their reputation and having repeat and referral business. Because you can't survive as a car dealer just doing one at a time. Sell that guy and never see him again. It doesn't work. You got to, especially if you're in a small town dealer like I am, you need repeat and referral business. You can't afford to make too many people mad because over time, you won't have any customers left. But some of these dealers just don't care. What they do is kind of like other businesses, I'm sure. They buy a business. They gin it up. They spend a tremendous amount of money on marketing. And they're in it to raise the numbers as far as they can, make as much money as they can, and then within 3 to 5 years, they're selling the dealership for a big profit. So they're not only making money ripping people off on car deals, but they're also making a whole lot more money when they sell the dealership because they've been able to increase the numbers. And, a buyer of car dealerships loves to buy a dealership that's profitable, that's been doing really well, selling a bunch of cars. Regardless of how they've been doing it, they may come in and do things right. That's happened in the Tri-Cities market where a dealership group came in and bought a dealership, ran the numbers up, and then turned right around and sold it. It's happened a bunch of times. But is that who you want to buy a car from? I think not. I believe the other day I told the story about a phone call that I got. It was a voicemail, and I'd been out of town and didn't see it until 2 days later, so I finally called the guy back, and he was wanting advice. His son's wanting to buy a used car, and he's wanting to spend $15,000 or less, and he's wanting to buy it in Philadelphia. He lives in Philadelphia. And I asked the guy where he is. He said he's been listening to my podcast or this particular program, which on a radio show or podcast. He's been listening to it for over a year. And I said, where do you live? He said, San Francisco. That just warms my heart. And he appreciates, the fact that there is a program out there that's trying to solve a problem in an industry that's like no other that I know of. I'm sure that if you go into a John Deere tractor dealership and you ask for a price on a 25 horsepower diesel tractor with a front loader, they give you a price. If you tell them, say, is that the least you'll take? They'll probably come down. It's negotiable. Just like buying a house. It's negotiable. The thing about real estate, though, that I've always found interesting is that you have a real estate agent that is, you may just have one agent involved, and he's representing both the buyer and the seller, right? Now, that to me seems like there's potential for conflict there. Not that there is, and not that there's any particular agent who would, try to take advantage of that situation. I'm sure there are some that do. So there are a lot of different businesses where there's still negotiation. But those businesses are not using some type of a hook, some type of a disingenuous flyer that purports to offer free gifts to people if they just come in. No obligation. We won't put any pressure on you. You've won one of you've won three, in this particular case, 3 of 6 different potential gifts. So what do you expect? You expect to walk away with something. But that's not what happens. So anyway, I just want you to have a heads up to this kind of stuff because it's coming. It's coming even stronger this year, I believe, because the market has returned to its usual pattern. Whereas there are a lot more cars out there than there are buyers. Inventories are swelling up. There's a lot of incentives that are being passed on to dealers from the manufacturer to move more iron. And the more they move, the higher the bonuses that they can earn, based on the volume. And so, some dealers will still do everything right. They'll get customers in. Customers come into the dealership because of their marketing or their website or whatever. And, they are there to counsel with the customers and give them options and let them take a test drive and explain all the features and benefits of the product, give them a price, and not really put any pressure on them to make a decision. Let them go home and think about it. That's not what a lot of these dealers want to hear. I mean, I don't want to hear it necessarily. I'd rather somebody make a decision now. Wouldn't you? I mean, that's human nature. You'd love to sell the vehicle now, but I want to sell the vehicle when the customer's ready to buy because I want them to be happy. I don't want them to buy a car on Saturday and wake up on Sunday and say, honey, what did we do? And then show up on Monday morning and they beat us to the dealership wanting to bring the car back. That's no fun. That's no fun for them or me. So, if you feel that you are being pushed, you know what that feels like, right? I mean, somebody says, you ought to just take it home today. They don't come up with any really good reasons to buy it. They just come up with these standardized high-pressure phrases to try to get you to act now. Well, if you don't buy it, it might not be here tomorrow. That type of thing. Will you honor this price tomorrow? Well, I don't know. It's probably not. But guess what? It'll be there tomorrow. And it might even cost less. You just wait till you get the phone call. And it'll be the salesperson. He said, well, what time are you guys coming back to get the car? So, well, we've been kind of thinking about it. And I just think the price is a little high. So I think we're going to shop around some more. Oh, boy. When you say that, that's when you'll see a lot of movement. You'll get more for your trade. You'll pay less for the car. Your monthly payment will go down. I mean, you're slapping that ball. Just imagine pickleball. You ever play pickleball? I love that game. That's fun. That's something I can play with my wife. But she runs me all over the court, and that's tough with a bad hip. And she can wear me out because she's very accurate. But, you're hitting that pickleball back on their side of the court. And it's up to them to respond. And so that salesperson, he's going to disappear. He's going to put you on hold or he's going to call you back. And it may not be him calling back. It's probably the manager. You're still in control because you're not sitting in their dealership. You're sitting in the comfort of your home. And they're scrambling because they want to sell the car. And so, unless they acquiesce, you're not going back in. And, you have them put their commitments in writing. This is another thing that you do that a lot of people just forget about. When you write something down on paper, it's hard to pretend like it doesn't exist. And you have them write it up on a buyer's contract. They may call it a deal sheet or a buyer's order. You have them put their offer in writing, sale price, trade allowance, take into account your payoff if you have one, what the taxes are, any processing fees, any other extra charges, what the base monthly payment will be with your down payment and have them show you want to see the interest rate, you want to see the term, and you want to make sure that they haven't added anything else in there that you don't know about. You can deal with those issues in the finance office when you get to the dealership, such as an extended warranty contract, prepaid maintenance, gap insurance. If you're way upside down on your trade, you might want to consider that. There's all of that stuff that should not be included in that monthly payment. That's called payment packing. I talk about that a lot on this show. It happens, and it causes people to pay thousands and thousands of dollars more for a vehicle transaction than they should. And many times they don't even know they bought it. So that's something, it's just another thing to watch out for. This really isn't that hard, but you got to be diligent. You got to pay attention. And, you've got leverage because you're the one with the money and the signature. I'll be back in just 1 minute. I don't have to come up with radio shows / podcast topics. My fans do it for me. The listeners, they're the ones out there living it. You know, they're the ones that are having to be the guinea pigs in a lot of these circumstances. I don't want you to be a guinea pig. I want you to be knowledgeable. I want you to go in with confidence. I want you to be nice, but be bold. I mean, that's the way to be, and that's the way to get what you want. And don't feel sorry for the salesperson, because, you know, there are customers that come in and the salesperson tells them what the price is. They say, okay, and they sign the paperwork and they leave, and, you know, the dealership's made a bunch of money on them. And then you have, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the people that listen to this program and practice the things that I preach and don't get taken advantage of. And they pay attention to the 4 targets. They understand that's how you get a deal. That's how you protect yourself. And they learn how to protect themselves in the service drive as well and not get taken advantage by an independent repair shop or a car dealership in the service department, or a collision repair shop for that matter. But you can get taken advantage of by a laundromat, you know, if you're not paying attention. I mean, we just have to be good consumers, right? Buyer beware. But be nice and be bold. And that's the best advice that I can give. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. I will see you next time. Call me, 423-552-2020. That's my real cell phone number. It's the only one I got. You can text me too, or you can email LennyLawson2020@gmail.com. And I'll see you next time.